The moment he tried to slip out of the hearing, everything changed. 1 second the room was moving through routine questions, and the next, a single unfinished sentence exposed something nobody expected. A high-ranking foreign official suddenly announcing he had other things to do, refusing to say where he was going, refusing even a simple acknowledgement of who he was meeting with. And in a hearing supposedly dedicated to free speech, the silence hit harder than any answer could. Lawmakers leaned in. Audiences watching felt the same jolt. Because when someone in power tries to leave right when questions start getting uncomfortable, it usually means the real story hasn't even begun.
I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing this afternoon, but I can assure you that...
But there's the free speech hearing. You're not going to tell me what you're doing this afternoon?
Free speech is one thing, discretion's quite another, too.
Okay. All right, so you're leaving to have lunch with the president. So, Mr. Farage, I have a question. Have you heard about the Epstein thing that's going on here?
I have.
You have? What do you think about it?
I'm not going to give comment on anything happening in America. I'm here as a witness.
Perfect.
I'm here as a witness.
I'm
here as a witness for what is happening in the United Kingdom and in the European
Perfect.
Continent.
Let me just go through it. So it's been 9 months, right, since we've been meeting in these hearings. We've not had Pam Bondi here, even though we have jurisdiction over the Department of Justice. Not Dan Bongino.
The gentleman yield?
Not Kash Patel. I will 100%. We'll go back and forth. Let me just do my thing.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to correct. Kash Patel's coming in 2. I'll give you an extra 10 seconds. Kash Patel, the director of FBI, is coming in 2 weeks, and the Attorney General's coming in 4 weeks.
Fantastic. But still, we're not doing that this week. The week we're having votes on the Epstein thing. So, Pam Bondi gives the influencers, these Republican influencers, a binder. It says Part 1 of the Epstein files. No one of you saw it. It was quite spectacular. The Attorney General then says the Epstein list is on her desk. Then DOJ issues a memo, says there is no list. Then, do you have any questions about any of that? We've had no hearings on any of that at all. That, the list is on my desk, then there is no list. Then we gave binders to Republican influencers. This committee's had no questions on any of how that transpired at the Department of Justice. Then hold on.
Well, it sounds like you're going to in the next few weeks. So that's a jolly good thing.
Mr. Farage, we can talk soon, but not yet. Okay.
Right.
So then the president comes out and says the whole thing's a hoax. He blasts his own base. He blames Barack Obama. I mean, he hasn't been president for a very long time. Republicans then in committee vote against the release in the Rules Committee. Then Republicans refuse to go back in the Rules Committee because they're getting blasted for their vote, getting crushed by their own base. Congress leaves a day early. Then the administration sends the Deputy Attorney General to meet with Maxwell in jail. He happens to be Trump's former personal attorney. She says something favorable about the president. Miraculously, she gets transferred to a minimum security prison. The president starts talking about how he has the right to pardon her if he wanted to. The leaks to the Wall Street Journal then stop. We come back from break. We have the Massey petition. Comer does a document dump where 97% of these documents are already public. How long has he had those documents? Why hasn't he released them for the last 6 weeks? Does it the day of the vote. Then Republicans drop a non-binding resolution trying to kill the Massey discharge petition. The White House said passing the Massey discharge petition is a hostile act. Wow. That's a lot of distraction and deflection and misinformation. Wait, passing a discharge petition to release the Epstein files, the White House said would be a hostile act. Nope, we have no questions about that. But why? Why is it that we're spending so much political capital to keep this list from coming out? You think the list should come out? You think we should know the people who dealt with Mr. Epstein, Mr. Farage?
I thought I was coming to a hearing on free speech, not process.
Oh, well, listen, but here's the good...
It sounds like you're discussing process.
No. Do you think the list should come out?
I have no opinion on it. I don't know at all.
So we have victims that were sexually abused by potentially people in power, and we don't know who's on the list.
I'm very happy.
Hold on, Mr. Farage. We don't know who's on the list. We don't know. We don't know who's on the list. We don't know if the president is or is not. I'm not going to say he is or isn't. I'm just going to say these are weird behaviors. We don't know that there aren't other people in Congress that are on the list, right? We have no idea. Do you think the list should come out? You think people in power should be held to account for these victims who have been sexually abused and assaulted? You think the list should come out?
I think that I'm very happy to come to a different hearing where you talk about legal process.
Okay.
But today,
Will the gentleman yield for a quick question?
Today we'll stick to
Were
free
you
speech.
aware that he has already called for the Epstein file to be released? It has been reported that he has called for it to be released.
Oh yeah, right here, just to refresh your memory.
Yeah, but it's,
I happen to have this.
But that's not
How
what
random.
But that is not. Look, you can ask me if you like about
Do you agree
social
with
security
yourself?
policy.
Do you agree with yourself?
We are here to discuss free speech.
Hold on, it's awkward for your lunch after this? Do you agree with yourself?
No, it isn't at all.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious. This committee has jurisdiction over the
Gentleman's
Department of
time.
Justice.
Yeah.
Why have we allowed Comer to cover this up for the last couple of months?
As I said,
why is this committee not
I
taking
said 6 weeks
jurisdiction?
ago that we will have the FBI director in, we will have the attorney general in, and we are doing that in 2 weeks. You can you can go through that whole list. That whole list, you can do whatever you want to do with, I got lots of questions for the FBI director, including the whistleblower who came forward and told him that Adam Schiff leaked classified information. I want to ask him about that as well as the issues you all want to ask him about. That's why he's coming, so we can ask all these questions and follow the process, as Mr. Farage just talked about.
Mr.
The
Chairman,
gentleman
I
from Virginia.
unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent?
I'd like to enter the political article into the record that Mr. Farage said the Epstein file should be released.
Without objection. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I thank the chairman. I want to talk about censorship tools that are being used by Europe and protectionist measures that have major consequences for U.S. companies and free expression.
And that's exactly when the tension snapped open. Instead of letting him go quietly, a member cut straight through the polite small talk and dropped the question that's been hanging over Washington for months. Have you heard about the Epstein situation? A simple yes would have been enough. Instead, he froze, tightened his posture, and insisted he wouldn't comment on anything happening in America. That's when the temperature in the room shifted. Because why dodge a question if you're only there as a neutral witness? Why clamp down so hard on a topic that has nothing to do with foreign policy and everything to do with accountability? He tried to steer the conversation back to European issues. But it was too late. The door he didn't want open was kicked wide, and suddenly the hearing everyone thought would be routine turned into one of the most revealing exchanges of the year. For 9 months, this committee has been meeting under the banner of transparency. 9 months of hearings, debates, statements, and promises. Yet somehow the one topic everyone outside that building keeps asking about, the files tied to one of the most disturbing criminal networks in recent memory, had barely been touched. And the moment his hesitation surfaced, lawmakers unleashed all the questions that had been piling up. Why has the committee never questioned why certain officials claimed the list was on a desk 1 week, only for a DOJ memo weeks later to insist there was no list? Why did binders labeled Part 1 of the files end up in the hands of partisan influencers before they ever reached the committee with jurisdiction? Why did the binder stunt happen at all? Why was there no formal review, no briefing, no explanation? Every unanswered question only amplified the next. And while he kept insisting he wasn't there to talk about internal American issues, the pattern itself became impossible to ignore. Because when you step back and look at the timeline, it stops feeling like coincidence and starts looking like choreography. First, an official hands influencers glossy binders filled with curated documents, raising eyebrows immediately. Then the Attorney General publicly claims the files are sitting on her desk. Not long after, the Department of Justice issues a memo saying such a list doesn't exist at all. Then hearings are postponed. Committees go home early. Staff whisper about timeline issues. The president dismisses the controversy as a hoax, though the evidence is clearly very real and documented. Party members suddenly refuse to re-enter the Rules Committee after voting against releasing the files, afraid of backlash from their own base. Then the administration sends a deputy attorney general for a private jail visit with Maxwell, someone who, by all reporting, rarely gets access to that level of official attention. And then the strangest part, right after she says something publicly favorable about the president, she is transferred to a minimum security facility. Observers say it looked like a coincidence. Others see a pattern. Rumors swirled online. Commentators speculated about whether pressure was being applied behind the scenes. Each camp had theories, but none had evidence. And that vacuum is exactly what fuels the public's frustration. Because you can't tell people, there is no list when multiple officials have already referred to one. You can't distribute binders to influencers and then claim documents don't exist. You can't move a high-profile prisoner right after a politically convenient statement and expect people not to ask questions. Even if every action in the chain had a perfectly legal explanation, The inconsistency itself is what ignites suspicion. Then came the document dump, the moment that was supposed to silence all speculation. 97% of the files had already been public. 97, meaning the release was more of a theater piece than a revelation. A gesture designed to say, see? We released everything, while revealing almost nothing. And the timing was impossible to ignore. These files could have been released 6 weeks earlier when Congress was in full session. Instead, they dropped them on the day of the vote, just hours before lawmakers were supposed to make decisions. Not enough time for analysis. Not enough time for scrutiny. Just enough time to say, you have it now, do with it what you can. It wasn't transparency. It was timing. And right as that happened, another twist hit. A non-binding resolution dropped out of nowhere, clearly aimed at derailing the discharge petition that would have forced the release of the files. The White House even said the petition itself was a hostile act. Hostile? Since when is a request for transparency hostile? If anything, secrecy is what sparks hostility. That's when the hearing turned from bureaucratic confusion into something far bigger. The member questioning the witness laid out every piece of the timeline, back to back, no pauses, no sugarcoating. The missing list, the influencer binders, the jail visit, the minimum security transfer, the early adjournment of Congress, the document dump, the sudden political panic, the refusal of committee members to return after backlash, the orders from party leadership, the warning from the White House. By the time he finished, the room fell silent. Because in the end, the biggest question isn't who's on the list. It's why the process around the list looks like a maze made to confuse the public, delay accountability, and wear people down until they stop asking. At that point, the witness tried one more time to say he wasn't there to talk about this issue. But by then, his answers didn't matter. What mattered was the undeniable pattern that had been laid bare. But lost in all the political chaos was something far more important: the survivors themselves. The people who spoke up years after being silenced, who trusted investigators, who believed every promise that accountability would come. Each time officials contradict each other, each time files are withheld, each time leaders dismiss the issue, those survivors are forced to relive the same betrayal all over again. And the system continues to send the same message. Decisions are being made at levels far above them, and justice is a moving target. Protecting victims should never be optional. But delays, confusion, and secrecy do the opposite. They reopen wounds. They create distrust. They let rumors flourish. And they quietly signal to powerful people everywhere that time is their most effective ally. So the real issue isn't whether a list exists in its complete form. The issue is why the people entrusted with protecting the truth keep stumbling, contradicting themselves, or stepping aside. Why each movement in this case feels like a sidestep instead of a step forward. Because real oversight is not complicated. It requires 3 straightforward actions: a confidential briefing with redacted documents for cleared lawmakers, a full chain of custody record showing who handled what documents and when, and an independent review that cannot be influenced by politics. These are basic procedures used every day in cases far less sensitive than this one. So the question remains, why hasn't it happened here? Some insiders say officials are worried about misinterpretation. Others claim security issues. Some cite ongoing investigations. But none of those explanations account for selective leaks, contradictory memos, or politically convenient timing. And none justify leaving survivors in limbo. In the end, this isn't about left or right. It's about whether a justice system can be trusted when political interests blur the lines. Transparency doesn't weaken institutions. Secrecy does. And the longer this case stays shrouded in mixed signals, the more the public believes someone powerful has something to hide. The hearing exposed that. Not because a witness answered questions, but because he didn't. And now the responsibility shifts to the viewers, the people watching, sharing, asking, pushing. Every major transparency shift in political history happened because pressure came from outside, not inside. And it starts with awareness, with refusing to let stories fade, with understanding that this isn't a one-day scandal, but a long chain of decisions that deserves daylight. So if you're watching this right now, don't let the confusion become the ending. Keep the conversation going. Keep the spotlight where it belongs. Demand accountability from the people who promised it. And stay locked in, because this story is nowhere near finished. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, Make sure you hit subscribe, drop a like, and turn on notifications. It keeps this channel pushing for answers, and it makes sure you never miss the next chapter of this unfolding investigation.